From the moment she stepped inside the base, Captain Elena Ward knew she didn't belong, not because she lacked skill or strength, but because some people simply refused to see beyond what stood in front of them. And on that cold morning, when the metal trays clattered and the steam from breakfast rose in thin ghost-like spirals, one careless shove would ignite a story that the entire unit would never forget. The push wasn't hard enough to hurt, but it was sharp enough to reclaim every buried memory of disrespect Elena had endured. It was a shove loaded with assumption. A shove from a Marine who believed she was just another nobody. Elena stumbled, catching her balance as several Marines turned their heads. The mess hall fell into a strange, muted stillness, like the calm before a storm. For a moment, even the ceiling fans seemed to pause. The man who shoved her didn't bother looking back. To him, she was invisible, one of the countless lower-rank females he believed were taking up space in the real Marines' domain. He wouldn't learn the truth until later, when the walls themselves would seem to whisper her rank, her history, her scars, and her journey. But at that moment, she was simply a stranger holding a tray, absorbing the weight of 1,000 unspoken judgments. Elena had joined the Marines not for glory, not for some childhood dream of medals and uniforms, but because she had been forged by loss. Growing up in a rough Detroit neighborhood, she learned early how fragile life could be. Her younger brother, Mason, had always told her she was the strongest person he knew. When he passed away after a long struggle with illness, the silence he left behind carved an emptiness that no words could fill. She felt she owed him a future worth living, one where she pushed beyond the world she came from. And so she stood in front of the recruitment office one afternoon, wind biting her cheeks, and chose a path she knew would never be easy. Training had nearly broken her. Not physically, that pain she could conquer, but emotionally. Every day was a battlefield of subtle tests, whispers, smirks, doubts. She wasn't just fighting through mud and sweat, she was battling the invisible weight of expectations. People doubted her strength, her discipline, her right to stand among them. Some simply underestimated her because she did not fit their picture of what a Marine should look like. But each time she felt herself slipping, she thought of Mason. She imagined him smiling, cheering her forward, reminding her that she had survived storms far worse than exhaustion or doubt. Her perseverance didn't go unnoticed. She trained harder, studied longer, and pushed herself further than anyone expected. Her leadership grew from empathy, born of loss, forged in resilience. When the time came for promotions, she rose quickly, but quietly. She wasn't one to brag or demand attention. Her rank was earned through resolve, through choices that cost her comfort and sleep. She led with compassion and firmness, making decisions that saved lives during missions that scarred others. She had grown into a Marine others respected, those who knew her, anyway. But transfers brought new faces, and new faces meant new assumptions. And that is why, on the morning of the shove, she simply stood still, letting the moment pass as if it were nothing. Because to Elena, it truly was nothing in comparison to the battles she had fought inside herself. She took her seat in a corner of the mess hall, quietly observing the room. Marines chatted loudly, laughing over stories from training or complaining about drills. A few stole glances at her, puzzled by her lack of reaction. They didn't know her. They didn't know she could command an entire operation without raising her voice. They didn't know that the calmness on her face was the result of years of mastering pain. As the day unfolded, Elena focused on her tasks. She prepared for the briefing she would be leading that afternoon, a briefing that would determine the upcoming training cycles and simulation strategies. She reviewed documents, checked personnel evaluations, and wrote notes with the same precision she brought to every mission. But the morning incident followed her like a shadow, not because she cared about the disrespect, but because she sensed something deeper in the unit's culture, a divide she had seen many times before. A divide she had worked her whole career to help close. When the time for the briefing arrived, the room filled quickly. Uniforms crisp, boots polished, eyes attentive. The Marine who had shoved her in the mess hall, Sergeant Cole Riker, entered last. He carried a reputation for being tough, skilled, and fiercely competitive. What he lacked was humility. He walked in with a swagger that made some step aside without him even noticing. Elena watched him take his place among the others, arms crossed confidently. Then the room fell silent. The commanding officer entered, followed by Elena. Only this time, she wasn't holding a tray or standing quietly in a corner. She wore her uniform adorned with the insignia that represented every battle she had endured. Eyes widened. Whispers died mid-breath. The same Marines who had overlooked her in the mess hall now sat with perfect posture, suddenly aware of who she truly was. But Sergeant Riker remained leaning back, arms crossed, indifferent, until he saw her step forward and the commanding officer gesture toward her with unmistakable respect. And then it hit him. The color drained from his face. Some Marines exchanged awkward glances, waiting for a reaction. But Elena didn't look at him. Instead, she began the briefing with calm authority, speaking with clarity and strength. Her tone carried the weight of experience, and the room hung on her every word. She outlined the training schedule, identified operational weaknesses, and proposed strategies that revealed a deep understanding of both combat and human behavior. Even Riker couldn't deny her brilliance. Yet it wasn't her rank or authority that silenced everyone, it was her presence. Her quiet resilience. Her ability to command a room without raising her voice. Her strength came from a place beyond skill, it came from the storms she had weathered, the losses she carried, and the determination she refused to surrender. When the briefing ended, the room erupted into movement, Marines gathering their notes and equipment. Riker remained seated, staring at the floor, wrestling with embarrassment. Yet Elena did not approach him. She believed that real leadership wasn't about humiliating someone, it was about allowing them the chance to grow. And sometimes, silence was the greatest teacher. Over the next few weeks, the unit began to change. The culture shifted, slowly but surely, under Elena's influence. She led by example, encouraging teamwork, listening to concerns, guiding with patience. Even Riker eventually approached her, not with arrogance, but with respect. She didn't need to recount the mess hall incident, the lesson had already been learned. Gradually, the tension dissolved, replaced by a sense of unity the base had been missing for a long time. The Marines worked harder, trained smarter, and supported each other more. Elena wasn't just a leader, she was a catalyst for change, the kind of change that echoed long after missions ended and bases emptied. Her journey reminded everyone that respect wasn't something granted by rank alone. It was earned through character, kindness, and quiet strength. And those who once overlooked her now stood proudly under her command, grateful for the Marine who had walked into their world with scars invisible but strength undeniable. As the sun set on another grueling day of training, Elena stood outside the base, watching the horizon glow in shades of orange and gold. She thought of Mason, of the boy who believed she was unstoppable long before she believed it herself. She felt his presence in the wind, gentle and encouraging, as if he were telling her she had finally become the leader she was meant to be. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty: no shove, no doubt, no prejudice could ever diminish the power of a woman who had fought battles far greater than anyone realized. If this story touched your heart, please support the video. Your engagement truly helps these stories reach more people who might need them. Please comment below. Strength is silent, but it changes everything.